Hello everyone and welcome back. In this lesson, we are going to look at how to add lights to your scene. So to add a new light to your scene, simply press Shift A to bring up the Add menu, and then you see there's a light section, and underneath you have your different types of light: point, light, sun, spotlight and area. So let's create a point light, and you'll see it's going to create it in the center of your world or wherever your 3D cursor is placed. And now I can simply press G and move it around. So I'm going to press G and Z to move it up slightly so we can see the light right there on top of the chair. So to see the actual light, we all have to switch over to the render preview mode. So you'll see these little spheres here at the top. We have got the wireframe solid and then material preview to see the material. But then the last one is the render preview. So click on that one and then you will be able to see the lights interacting in your scene. So now if I move this light around by pressing G, you can see how the light is affecting the model. So as you can see, we have got this gray background that's kind of lighting our model from all sides. And that's basically where we are going to place our HDRI later. But for now, I just want to get rid of this gray background. To do that, we are going to go over to this little world properties on the properties panel. So you'll see there's a little red world or an earth. Just click on that and you will see currently it's got a background set and the color is this gray color and the strength is 1. So that's this gray color that you can see all around our scene. So I'm simply going to bring this strength down to 0, so you can just click that and then type 0. Press enter and now you will see that we won't have that gray background in our world. So now if you move the light around, you can actually see how it's affecting your scene. So press escape to just cancel that move. Let's see how you can change the properties of this light. So simply click on the light to select it. And then we are going to go to the light properties. So you will see a little green light bulb here and the properties panel. Click that and it will give all the properties for that selected light. So as you can see, we've got a color. So you can click on the color and you can change the color of that light. And then below that you got the power, so you can increase the strength of your light. So you can also just type in a number, maybe 120, and you can see how that is affecting our scene. So now if I move the light a little bit further away, you can see how the light is a little bit more stronger now. So let's change that back to a white color. Then you can also increase or decrease the diffuse and you can see how that's affecting the scene. And you can also play with the specular and also volume if you are using any volumes in your scene. But for now, you can leave them as default. You can also increase or decrease the radius of the light and this will affect the shadows. So a smaller light will produce a sharper shadow and a bigger light will produce a softer shadow. So let me show you how that works. So I'm going to move the chair up. So I'm going to press D and then Z and move it up until the setting is on the grid. You can also look at this from the front by clicking on this axis. So if I click the X axis, you'll see everything right from the front. So now you can simply press G and Z again with a chair selected and you can position it on top of the grid. So now I'm going to create a plane so that we can see how the shadow looks. So I'm going to press Shift A to bring up the Add menu, go to Mesh, and then select the plane. And then you can see it's going to create this plane underneath our chair and I'm going to scale it up. So press S and scale it up. And now I can see we have some shadows. So I'm going to move the light up slightly and a little bit away from the chair like that. So now you can see if we make the radius of the light bigger, you will get a softer shadow. So if we make this light 2 meters, you'll see we have a soft shadow behind the chair. And if I make this smaller, like maybe 0.1, you'll see that we have a much sharper shadow. So you can also move it around and see how that affects the shadow. And let's just maybe make it 1 meter radius. Let's add a different type of light. Let's see how we can add a spotlight to the scene. So let's delete this light. I'm going to just highlight it, press X and delete that. And then I'm going to press Shift A to bring add up menu. Go to light, and this time I will add the spotlight. So you can see the spotlight is added kind of underneath our plane. So we need to move it up. So with a light selected, press G and Z and pull it up. Now this light is not very powerful at the moment. So with the light selected, go to the light properties and let's increase the power to about 200. And now I can see we have a nice spotlight above the chair, and the same thing goes for the radius. If we make the radius very small like 0.1, you get a sharp shadow under the chair. And if we increase the radius to about 2, you will see that the shadow appears a lot softer. You can also change the color of the spotlight exactly the same as the point light. So I can change this to maybe like a blue color, and you can see how that affects it. You can also use this yellow dot to kind of position your spotlight, so you can just simply click it and drag it around, and then will kind of snap to objects. If you want to point it to a specific area on the chair, or you can just manually move it around until you are happy with the angle. You can also move the spotlight around and then use this to adjust the angle of that spotlight. Let's maybe bring it up to about 500, and I can see that it's affecting the chair a little bit better. You can also add multiple lights, so I can add another point light underneath the chair is like that, and I can change the color of this point light, and I can change the color of this point light. Let's increase the power to around 100, and I can see that we have two different lights in the scene. Normally I like to add an area light to the scene, so let's add an area light. Let's bring that up and see how that works. So you can see the area light is almost like the spotlight, but it's just a flat plane. And then you can also change the angle by moving this yellow point around. We can also increase the power of the area light. Let's make it 300, and maybe let's delete the other lights from out of it. Just see how this area light works. So I'm going to delete the spotlight, and I'm also going to delete this point light under the chair. So now you can see we have this area light, and I can rotate it by just pressing R and then maybe just free rotate, or you can press R and X to rotate around the X axis. You can obviously move it around as well, and the same thing goes for the size. So I can increase the size to about say 2 meters, and then you'll get a lot of softer shadow. If I bring the size down to 0.1, you'll see that we get a hard shadow. So maybe let's put that back to about 2 meters for now. And you can also change the shape of the light. So currently you can see the light is a square. So we can change this to a rectangle, or we can change this to a disc, which is like a circle. Or you can change it to ellipse. You can obviously then adjust the size as well of that ellipse to make some adjustments similar. If it's on a rectangle, you can change the size of the rectangle exactly how you want your light to be. We can also add a sun. So I'm gonna delete this light, and I'm going to create a sun. So Shift A, light, and then sun. So the sun works a little bit different than the other lights, so it doesn't really have a fall off. So it's always the same strength. It doesn't matter how far it is from your scene. So even if I move it up all the way up, then you can see it's not really affecting the strength of the sun, because the sun has got so much power, it doesn't really diffuse. So you can change the angle by moving this yellow dot again. And maybe let's just move it off to the side so we can see what the angle looks like. You can also adjust the sun color by just adjusting the color right here. And you can obviously also increase or decrease the strength. Now the sun angle will affect your shadow. So if I make the angle bigger, you'll see that we'll get a softer shadow. If I make the angle smaller like 0.1, you'll see that we get a much harder shadow. And if I change this to like 10, you'll see that we get a softer shadow. So next we are going to look at HDRI and how you can add in HDRI to add light and also reflections. HDRI is basically a high dynamic range image that you can wrap around your whole scene as a 360-degree image. And that will light your scene from all angles. And it will also give you a reflection if you have any reflective objects in your scene. So first of all, let's delete this sunlight and let me quickly show you some examples of HDRI images. So here is a nice example of an image. As you can see, it's a 360-degree image that we can wrap around our scene. And because it's a high dynamic range image, these lights or the bright spots in this image will provide lighting in the scene as well as reflection. So let me show you how to add in HDRI. So if we go back to the world properties, the little round earth icon where we change the color, that is similar to an HDRI, but it's just using one single color. We want to add an image texture in the place of this gray color. So let's go back to the shading workspace here at the top, and this is a really easy way to just add an HDRI right here in the shading tab. So at the bottom you'll see there's a drop down menu that says object or world. So we are going to switch this over to world because we want to change the world texture, which is HDRI. And as you can see, currently we have our world output node, this one. And then we also have background node, which is using this gray color that we want to replace. So obviously we can't see it now because we are currently on material preview mode. And we need to be in render mode or render preview to see our scene correctly. So I'm going to change over to the render icon view here on the side. And as you can see, the scene is now completely black because we have delayed all the lights and set our background strength to 0. Obviously, if we increase this again to 1, we will see that gray color, but we don't want that gray color. So I'm going to delete this node. So click on this background node, press X, and it's going to delete that node. So next we need to create a new node. To create a new node, you can either go to the add menu at the top and you can browse through these different folders to add different nodes, or you can search for a node. There's also a shortcut to bring up an add menu, which is the same as when creating a new object. Press Shift A and it's going to bring up the add menu. Next, we are going to click on search to search for a specific node. You can just type environment and you will see it's going to bring up the environment texture. So click on that to create the node and then just click to place it again. Now the environment texture is basically the node where we are going to load our 3 images. So first you need an image, so you can go to a website like Polyheaven, or you can just simply Google search for free HDRI image and you will find a couple. So I'm going to click on the open button and I'm going to browse to the folder where I save my HDRI and I'm simply going to select it and then click open image. Now next we need to connect this node to the world output node. So simply click on this color output and connect it to the surface input on the world output node. And now you will see that your scene will update it. And if we orbit around the scene, you will actually see that the image has now been wrapped around. And as you can see, it's also lighting our way because we don't have any lights in the scene. If you look in the outline here at the top, you see there's a plane, which is the floor and the chair. So the HDRI is actually providing the lighting for the scene. We can add another node so that we can control the strength of this HDRI, because maybe you want to make the HDRI a little bit less or a little bit more darker or a little bit brighter. So for that you need one extra node between these two nodes. So I try to make gap between these two nodes. And then I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to click on search. I'm going to search background. Click it to create a new node, and now you can simply just drag this node into this line to connect it, and you will see it's automatically going to connect into this node system. So now we have this strength value. If I bring this down to 0, you'll see that the HDRI will be completely black because we are using the value 0. And if you set this to 1, then it will use the normal standard value of that HDRI. But you can adjust this. You can bring this down to maybe 0.2 to just add a little bit of lighting. So now we can go back to the layout scene and we can add some lights. So let's add a spotlight. Let's bring the spotlight up and let's increase the strength of the spotlight to 250. So now you can see the light or the spotlight is affecting the scene as well as the HDRI. So if I look at the back of the chair, you can see that we also get some lighting from the HDRI. And then obviously we also getting the light from the spotlight, so we can maybe increase the strength of the spotlight. And as you can see, we get the nice shadow at the bottom. We can maybe increase the radius to get a softer shadow, and we still getting the light from the HDRI. Now the HDRI will also provide reflections. If you have a very reflective object in your scene, you will be able to see the HDRI in the reflection. So I'm going to create a new mesh, and this time I'm going to create a UV sphere. So move it to the side a little bit. And I'm going to shade this one smooth. Right click and then shade smooth. And then with this sphere selected, I'm going to go to the shading tab to give it a material. So remember, we changed this to world to see the HDRI settings here. So I'm going to change this back to object. And this will give you access to change the material of a specific object. So with the sphere selected, I'm going to click new to create a new material. And this time I'm going to make it completely metallic. So I'm going to bring the metallic value up to 1. And then I'm also going to bring the roughness down to 0. So it's basically a complete perfect mirror or crown ball. And now if we go closer to this ball or this sphere, you can see that it's reflecting the environment. So basically the HDRI will provide lighting as well as reflection, which is pretty cool. Another thing that you can do is you can hide the HDRI from the viewport. So sometimes you don't really want to see the HDRI in the viewport, but you still want the HDRI affect your scene with lighting and reflections. So to do that, we are going to go to this little camera icon on the side, and this is the render properties. And then scroll all the way down until you get to film and expand that film. And then you basically just tick this transparent box, and that will hide the HDRI from the scene. And it will basically show a transparent background, but it will still affect your scene. So we still get the lighting and reflection from that HDRI image, which is very nice. If you want to make quick adjustment to your HDRI image without going into the shading workspace, you can simply click on this world properties icon here on the side. So here you can increase or decrease the value of the strength. Just play around with it. I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye.